So, thank you for being here tonight for our April reading of the Milwaukie Poetry Series. It's my pleasure to introduce our poet, Lois Rosen, tonight. I've been looking forward to this very much. Lois's award-winning poems and stories have appeared in over 100 journals, and the list is extremely long. She leads 2 Amherst writing workshops in Salem, where she's taught creative writing at Willamette University and English as a second language at Chemeketa Community College. She's also taught English in New York, Japan, Costa Rica, and Ecuador. She received her MFA in fiction from the Rainer Writing Workshop, which awarded her a Deborah Tall Memorial Scholarship. Trap Rock Books published her first poetry collection, Pigeons, in 2004. T-Bot Bach published her second poetry book, Nice and Loud, in 2015. So that's recently out. In 2016, the debut Portland Liars League presented her story, The Hollywood Life, at the Literary Arts Auditorium. And the Willamette Writers Conference awarded her story, Herring, the K. Snow Award First Prize in Fiction. She's a founder of Salem's Peregrine Poets. She leads the Trillium Writers Group and the ICL Writers. You can see that she's very active. Those of you that saw the invitation saw the 2 links. So if you want to see more of her works online, there are 2 links that you can go to. She grew up, maybe she'll tell us more about this, I suspect so. She grew up in Yonkers, New York, in a tiny apartment. Because of that, she feels she's lucky to have lived over half her life in Salem on 9 or more wooded acres with her husband Kevin and their cat Pauline. Would you join me in welcoming our poet tonight, Lois Rosen? Lois? Very good. Very good, lady.
Oops, my books are not in there. That's better. Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Poetry Committee. I feel very honored and very lucky to be here. Very excited to be here. My first book, Pigeons, came out the year after I retired, and I started writing poetry in high school. So it was like a miracle when the book finally came out. It was just wonderful. So I'm going to read some poems from the first book, some poems from the second book, and then a couple of new poems. And I especially want to thank my teachers, Carlos and Paul Ann. Yeah, so lucky. So the first one is called My Bronx, although actually I lived in Yonkers, but Yonkers is right over the border from the Bronx, and when you wanted to go make out with a guy in a car, you would drive over to this other part near the Hudson River, not very far away. And then there's also other lovely things in the Bronx. My favorite place probably on earth is Wave Hill Park, which is in the Bronx, but it's kind of hidden, and it's used to be the home of Mark Twain and Toscanini, and now it's a landscape architecture school and a beautiful garden. Has anybody been there? No? Ah, yeah. And Elsa is my Danish-American friend who taught with me in the South Bronx, and we taught in a really dangerous neighborhood at that time. We had hood locks, steering wheel locks, tank locks, whatever locks you could have on a car. We had those locks. And we're still very close friends. My Bronx. I am going back in July to the beautiful leafy Bronx, the hidden section beside the Hudson, where bus lines don't go, where Elsa and I stroll lanes with no sidewalks, where she carries nail scissors, snips a roadside bouquet of Queen Anne's lace. Passing each mansion, she updates me on which ambassadors live there now, the latest scandals. At Wave Hill, the public park no signs point to, where boomboxes, athletic gear, and outside food are forbidden, where sweeping lawns befit the legendary inhabitants Twain and Toscanini, a landscape artist of international renown maintains the English garden, the reflecting pool, park of painters, readers, and writers at work, right here in the Bronx. I'm not kidding. This is the Bronx of my young heart, my beautiful Bronx, 30 years ago, where Eileen Russo's father takes us cruising on the river, where the wind tousles my hair. I am Venus, breaking hearts, giggling, sipping ginger ale. The road I walk with Elsa is the same lover's lane, where a boy and I parked his parents' 60s Oldsmobile when we went to college but lived at home. Here, under maples, we belonged lip to lip. When I visit Elsa now on the balcony of her apartment, 8 stories above the river, we retell our history, milestones of the year. She tells me the pike return as the Hudson becomes cleaner. Her terrace is a bower of window box impatience, pale as mist. The moonflower flings open its rare blossom, a huge morning glory that blooms at night and smells like lifelong friendship would if it were perfume. The bridge to New Jersey shines in the darkness. I thought I'd read the next one because we had snow this year in Salem. And when I was a child, that was just the absolutely most wonderful thing, to have snow covering the streets and the cars. And I would run down and throw myself into the snow. And I loved it so much. Snow angels. Early snow was best. Before the plow came, before Louis the Super crooned Chattanooga choo-choo to the clang of the shovel. Yonkers, our bride of winter cloaked in ermine, and didn't we feel rich, everything clean and gleaming. I sang, Frosty the Snowman was a jolly, happy soul. My blanket shifted like a snowdrift. Gay schluffen, shh, go back to bed. Do you want to wake your father? No matter. I read the Bobbsey twins at the ice carnival with the radio light Uncle Sam Berkowitz had rigged above my bed, the blanket hugging my body, though it was years too early to even consider my body a body. While everybody slept, our souls flew right to God singing. Angels had feathers softer than snow, voices more beautiful than Rosemary Clooney's. Quiet didn't exist in heaven. Nobody's mother yelled, Quiet, you'll wake the dead. Grandpa sang Hava Nagila with God, and the snow angels danced as early as they wanted. This one's for my husband. I grew up in this 96 family apartment building, but there were some houses along our street, and one of them belonged to the Torellis. And I think this is part of where my love of Italian and all things Italian comes from. I also had wonderful neighbors who were Italian in our building. So, Torelli's peaches. We never ate those peaches, walled in behind a wooden fence. Tips of trees loaded with ripened globes, red and golden, tantalizing kids who could almost taste the sugary pulp, lick the nectar, cooling their chins. On a block of working-class Jews, the name Torelli stood for everything Italian: palazzos, contessas, ravioli, tortoni, Michelangelo, paintings suspended in air. That's amore, 3 coins in a fountain, where wishes are granted in Rome. And always it is love. Audrey Hepburn, the prince disguised as a commoner, willing to sacrifice the villa, the title for her, the princess we girls on Elliott Avenue dream of becoming. Someday, Richard Cantor will stop playing stickball and notice me. Someday he'll beg for my hand. I'll say, perhaps, bring me the ripest peach from Torelli's. No one we know has ever scaled that fence. When I grow up, I will marry a man like Torelli, who wraps his trees in canvas every winter, who will wrap his arms around me, leaving every branch unbroken, ready to bloom. Okay, so it's Passover. If I'm counting right, this is the third night of Passover. So I have a number of Passover-related poems. And I had some two women friends that took a Seder that came out of Lilith magazine, which is a feminist Jewish magazine, and it was very cool to go to their Seders. This Passover, why is this night different from all other nights? The child's prayer asks. Once we were slaves in Egypt, but these days we reuse the old shank bone Ronnie has kept in her freezer. And the hard-boiled egg, the story says, gets stronger with boiling, cracks open. Matzah, the bread our foremothers carried in the desert, the women, like the bread, having no chance to rise. And moror, the bitter herb, making our eyes tear without warning, the way passing a woman who resembles mother can catch me in the throat. And add to that charosis, diced apples, manischewitz, and cinnamon, red-brown like bricks. Isn't this the stinging sweetness of sacrifice, the way mother kept sweating, her applause and her yearning? So understand what it means to have women at our Seder raise their glasses and say, let's drink this wine to Lois's mother. Let's drink to Nettie. Let's see, where am I? Okay, this is an Oregon poem. And yeah, my father-in-law was in very bad shape physically. And actually the family still has the farm, but we would go there quite often. It was beautiful. I hate to not be going to that farm anymore. And anyway, my husband was helping take care of his dad, and their last name is Davidson. So, Davidson's quarry. That day, foxgloves against the rock wall spire, 3 feet tall, holding on. Late blooms at the tips of stalks, lower ones turn to conical pods, not yet dry enough to burst. Odors of cow manure and mint, crushed leaves cupped to my face, inhaling, no noise from backhoes and scrapers. Stiff grass in the pond muck. It would be easy to slip, my husband warned me. He was at the farmhouse, showering his father, holding the urinal, saying later, I wish I could do more. It was June. There were bird calls, flickers, robins, certainly stellar jays. Mount Jefferson still snow-capped behind the pond, sun glinting in the ripples, an occasional bubble in the gray surface. A red dragonfly whirred. A cardinal meadowhawk. I looked it up. It seemed critical to memorize the name, record every detail, to keep that in mind, to keep something. And let's see. This is the last one from the first book, and it's also about Easter. And part of it is kind of how weird it is to be celebrating Passover and Easter and be Jewish. Anyway, And I taught English as a second language. So I had students from many, many religions in many countries. And most of my students, especially when I started, were Southeast Asian refugees. Ancestor worship. Cambodians ask about our Easter. Rabbits, eggs, the resurrection, of course. Still, it hangs inside me, the traditional pogrom, Cossacks slaughtering Jews for Lent. In my classroom, the accents remind me of my childhood. Shana for beautiful, Dumkov, Kugel, insults and food. Kindala, Maidala, the love we add to any word. My students tell of crowded boats, miraculous escape. We've made that trip. A Seder plate stands for life, horseradish, that dark rose with thorns, another shankbone, another hard-boiled egg. Outside, it's April, wild hyacinth and violets, deliberate tulips, the sudden multitudes of red. My students speak English with a flavor, the Last Supper, take, eat, feast, for anniversaries of dying. We are rice, grains that cling together, incense before photos of our ancestors. So, moving to the next book. Yes, so one of the mantras when I was growing up was don't trust anyone who isn't Jewish. But as you can see, even before I left New York, I lived in a building that had Irish and Italian and people from lots of places. So, and I believe that I wrote this poem in Paul Ann's class, and Pauline helped me with it. Paul Ann helped me with it. So, first communion. Had I ever held a flower before? Maybe a dandelion in a park. After the O'Connors invited me to their country house, I returned home hugging an armful of peonies. No longer was I fourth floor walk-up, father had cancer and could die, no room of her own, Lois Leibowitz. Something lush had been given to me. Something about me had made this family of Catholics offer flowers, though Daddy swore Johnny O'Connor was a real anti-Semite. I brought the bouquet into our cramped apartment. Blooms big as baby heads in a Delwood dairy milk bottle graced our coffee table beside Mama's ashtrays of lipstick Lucky Strike butts. I'd brought home something un-Jewish as lobster. They smelled like perfume. Ooh, time is going just right. So I'm so happy. So the next poem is Strudel, and the title of the book, Nice and Loud, comes from this poem, and it's a prose poem. And I was really just fooling around trying to figure out, there are a lot of expressions with nice, and also quite a few of these were said to me when I was a teenager. So, and there's a little epigram in the beginning that comes from the Jewish kosher cookbooks. And there's a whole series. There's the Italian Jewish one, the Chinese Jewish one, and they're filled with jokes. Just filled with jokes. It's so much fun. So this quote comes from, I think it comes from the Italian kosher cookbook, if I'm remembering right. Strudel. Strudel making is not a picnic. So better you should find a nice bakery and buy your strudel there. Give me a nice rye bread, well browned, a nice piece of strudel, a nice corned beef or pastrami, a nice tongue. That's not a nice way to talk. Make nice Jewish friends, marry a nice Jewish boy. Be nice to me, I might die soon. Nice and easy, play nice. That's a nice way to treat your parents. Nice going, nice try, nice as pie. some nice present you brought me. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything. Some nice mouth you have, nice and loud. Get a nice job as a teacher with summers off. Some nice weather we're having. This is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. Nice gesture. Make nice. Be nice to me. I might die soon. Did you forget? Another nice mess you've made. Nice way to talk to us. Some nice daughter you turned out to be. Nice sermon, nice music, nice eulogy, nice funeral. So nice of you to come. So nice of you to invite me. So nice of you to remember. Nice knowing you. Have a nice day, a nice trip, a nice life. Nice as can be, nice and fattening, nice and juicy, nice and hot. Okay, so this is one imagining what life was like for my mother when she was taking care of my father who had face cancer and almost died. Was told he was going to die, but actually he lived about 20 years longer. But anyway, so much she shouldn't say. Aishes Chayil, a woman of valor, like in King Solomon's verse recited at funerals. She sacrifices jobs, vacations, when he gets cancer, can't swallow. A psychiatrist, he waves away, but can't stop tears dripping on the oxygen line, IV tethering him to bed. Never does the husband gain back flesh muscle taken from the jaw, the smooth voice. The rattle can't be helped. The rabbi, Jolly Nosher of Sisterhood Blintzes, repeats pleas of 1,000,000 rabbis in prayer shawls with Hebrew letters embroidered golden on blue velvet, swaths of silk, the Mrs. Rabbis, iron, creaseless. The pious man's words don't remove surgeries and scars. Learned in Torah, he echoes Moses, who doesn't mention his better half. Bless her duty, loyalty, unbeatable gefilte fish, home-baked chocolate almond macaroons, spoonful by spoonful, pudding, applesauce, and chicken soup she tips gingerly into his mouth. Live, God damn you, live. Okay, this one's a little more lighthearted, but it comes from that my in-laws had the farm, still do, next door to the Marion Friends Cemetery in Marion, Oregon, and they maintained that cemetery for many, many years. And Floyd is my father-in-law, and Dorothy is my mother-in-law. My plot: someday I will probably lie near Floyd in the ground. The cemetery adjoins his and Dorothy's house up Marion Hill Road. 50-plus years they maintained those plots. One day in his front room, speaking of bargaining, he said, "I Jewed them down." Then turned to me, his nightmare daughter-in-law, older than his son, divorced, Jewish New Yorker with a child. Guess I can't say that anymore. Another visit, he said, 2 plots in the cemetery had come available, $50 apiece, and he checked if an unembalmed body in a plain pine box with a service in Hebrew could be buried there. He winked at me. "You're good to go." I don't know who I'm going to talk to in that cemetery, but anyway. I've been very upset about the anti-immigration rulings and what's been going on. My career was teaching English as a second language at Shemekara, so I have a number of poems about my students, and I'm going to read a couple of them and a couple about, well, you'll see. Anyway, so the sorrow of Mashari al-Gharibali. Inside his elbow, Mashari holds the drum inlaid with mother of pearl. Our class listens. The voice of the drum whispers, entices. The melody is from Kuwait, the Iraqi war, an everyday lesson of childhood. He plays only after we beg him, and even then blushes, stammering about a lack of skill. The drum is surprisingly small as he sings in Arabic about a woman lovely as a garden. The drum skin becomes a moon, white and far away. And here's another one, which is like, history is coming around again. This was during a time where there was anti-immigration things going on too, and it is really true what teachers were told to say in this poem. Adios, Roberto. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's not the right poem. There we go. Yeah, Cinco de Mayo. The rhododendron exhausts itself with blooming. A cat sleeps under the front bumper. May lawn daisies lose their heads to the mower, but peonies that disappointed last year promise heavy flowering. The Olympic torch arrives at the Capitol as the Sprague Olympian marching band belts out arousing chariots of fire. Smug Blackberry prepares again to dominate. This is not a holiday we celebrate in my country, Jose insists. The faucet leaks all night. Mossy lichen spreads up the trunk and branches. Madonna is big with child, but she won't name him Jesus. Lilacs begin to brown. In the ESL student movie, the groom is hauled away by immigration. The latest memo said, classrooms are sacrosanct. If immigration officers come, send them to security. Teach the students to say, I'd like my lawyer present. Let's see, I'm going to skip ahead a little. Yeah. I was at the Saturday market in Salem last week, and somebody was selling drink mix, and it was for shrubs. And I had heard, I went to a deli in New York last year, and they were also serving shrubs. So it's very interesting. Oh, and matzah brai is what we often did on Passover for breakfast in the morning. My mom would take the matzah and break it up and mix it with egg and kind of make a sort of an omelet with matzah. Manhattan matzah brai. A delicacy in 2014 on the summer bill of fare at Russ and Daughters Cafe on the Lower East Side, once a tumult of refugees in teeming tenements, chewing this old country mishmash listed now beside paddlefish caviar, $100 plus, under beet and lemon shrub, an icy American colonial aperitif of vinegar-dashed fruit. I'd be meshuggah, which means crazy, a total nutcase to imply my parents imbibed any such drink on Passover at Seder's instead of strictly kosher Manischewitz. Mama and I woke before Papa to break the matzahs, dropped pieces into a bowl of milk and let them soak, soften, no sharp edges left to scrape the linings of our mouth. We sprinkled in salt from the shaker, used to add the Seder plate's tears. This modern matzah brai's thin as a shingle, and sorry, but an applesauce side goes with latkes, not Passover breakfast. How do we stomach anything in New York humidity? And did we, back on nights when we recited the plagues, lice, vermin, murder of the enemy's firstborn? It became game-like, dripping fingertips into wine, tapping drops on our plate to signify blood. I recited, Manish chala na halayla hazeh mikal halelos. Why is this night different from all other nights? But question nothing. Fork jabbed into the brisket, matzah meal cake, and macaroons. Mornings I gobbled my plate heap full of matzah brie. Today, on my iPhone news, fleeing refugees grasp bundles of bread, rice, water, family if they're lucky. I await my bill in air conditioning at a marble table, jars of kosher pickles lining shelves as decoration. Matzah brie eaten. Glad it's on somebody's menu. I long to savor the bread of affliction reformed. Oval-shaped, golden-colored, soft. And, okay. Chordate shape is the title of this poem, and Eleanor Berry taught me that chordate means heart. And let's see. Yeah, I wrote this when I was at the estuary, I've forgotten, near Lincoln City. Yeah, chordate shape. And actually this stone really did look like a heart. A stone resembles a valentine, but smooth, calcified, and white. It will never become a human heart, require surgery, digitalis, or aspirin, emergency resuscitation. It may consider that life lucky, no matter how much ocean and rivers batter and bash. It will not await biopsy reports, scans, blood test results by telephone or mail, won't be shown color photos, be told or left to deduce that suspicious lines may disappear, be nothing, prove fatal. No bucket list wish to grant returns a stone to shore. It will not moan or sob or gasp or hack or shriek. A hand pockets it to take home as a cheerful souvenir. One splash of incoming tide, that's that. Its indentation disappears from sand. Yeah, this was at a time where there's a lot of illness in my family and in my losing friends, and there's a lot of things like that on my mind. But now, newer stuff. And yeah, I think I'll read 3 of these. And the first one I'm dedicating to Jane and Sharon because they're both dancers. And it's in 3 parts, 3 different times of my life. Not a professional ballerina. I'm a kindergartner showing off my sunset gold, satin-topped leotard with a triple-layered, stiff-net tutu sticking way, way out, wearing black leather ballerina slippers on the day camp bus where Stanley, our driver, grins. You look beautiful. And I bow to my fans. I am the dancer who does not change into shorts or a bathing suit all day. Finally, 12, promoted to dance on point, I slip my feet into pink satin toe shoes. Lambswool puffs caress my toes. Long pink satin ribbons crisscross my ankles. I teeter on tippy toes, rising relevé, pas de bourrée, and assemblée aloft. In the mirrored room at the bar, I plie, arabesque, let go, float above Mrs. Berliner's live pianos, Debussy, Tchaikovsky. Now 69, at jazzercise, no bar, no mirrored walls, not one tutu, any old sneakers, ceiling fans to cool hot flashes. I move to Uptown Funk. Love yourself, rock that body, and the consolation of one call away. Stiff and creaky, still I grapevine, plie, chasse, as iPod speakers blare and walk sassy to Baby, I'm Worth It. Jazzercise is so much fun. Okay. This one goes back to my students and my feeling now about what's been going on with immigration. And Nyakle was one of my students, and I'm starting with an epigram from something he wrote, a story that was in a magazine my class put together called The Mixing Bowl. And yeah, so this is this year. On International Holocaust Remembrance Day, 2017. And then this is Nyak's quote. I still have difficulty forgetting my escape from Vietnam by boat. 4 days with no food or drink. Nyakle's essay appeared in my ESL students' 1988 magazine, The Mixing Bowl. After 4 days, bailing a boat adrift in high waves, he described the flavor of water as tastier than honey. On my stovetop, 2 teapots. The curved-spouted one pours more easily. The other boils 8 cups. My house has 3 bathrooms and 1 kitchen sink, faucets for hot and cold, 2 showers. And this is another quote from Nyak. I dare to tell you water is the most delicious beverage. Do you agree with me? Nyak asked. I agree. How many Syrians, Sudanese, South and Central Americans die of thirst or drown daily? On Holocaust Remembrance Day this year, our, not my president, banned refugees, families, children needing surgery, who had left 7 countries' wars, tyranny, starvation. Snow falls slantwise outside my picture window, the flakes, lovely white. Not the ash of Auschwitz, not villages torched, not smoke curling after a monk ignited, protesting in your country, his photo in life. Rain hardens to hail, my home encased in icicles, torrents cascade from the gutters, signs on our roads, high water. My car splashes through. Nyak, precious gem, your ink runs onto the page in a language you didn't expect to be speaking. My water bottle's easy to refill. How many jugfuls should we keep on hand, just in case? And the last one goes back to my love of Italian and my love of food and studying Italian. And Arthur Avenue is the Italian neighborhood in the Bronx that's still there, and it's fantastic. The food is so good. So, amore. I'm not saying New York pizza isn't tasty, nor denying that on the Bronx's Arthur Avenue, I didn't breathe in simmering tomato sauce, savory prosciutto, fresh mozzarella. But in Rome, maybe it's the pure wheat, the rosso red of the local tomatoes, water so untainted, the guide in Trastevere urges us to drink from faucets rising from cobblestones. Maybe it's the recipes passed for generations in a bakery like Forno. Maybe flavors diluted when immigrants crossed the Atlantic. Maybe too much salt was lost in their tears. Foot-wide slabs of garnished dough lie side by side on the trattoria counter. It doesn't matter a semester's Italian clots in my brain. The counterman's spatula lifts my section into the oven. Cheese romances the tang of the sauce. Lightly burned crust enlivens the flavor. Bite after bite, I swoon. Forget dark-eyed Adonises on Vespas vrooming past me. This is first bite love, a Roman holiday of the taste buds. Bravissimo, magnifico, molto bene, molto, molto bene. Thank you.
So, some questions?
Oh.
If there are any, and I know, I certainly have one. Which is,
Please.
well, what's your writing practice? And especially with your teaching schedule.
Well,
How does that work?
I'm not teaching full-time anymore, nor am I teaching adjunct at Willamette anymore. So now it's completely up to me. So there's a program at Willamette called ICL, the Institute for Continued Learning for Retirees. This is kind of a long story, but Peter Rasmussen is the doctor that headed the Death with Dignity law. And toward the end, he got brain cancer, and he was the curriculum specialist at this program at Willamette, and it was all lectures. And he wanted to also have small groups. So he asked various people, and he asked me if I would lead a writing group, and I said yes, but only if I could use the Amherst method, which I had just been learning and I love. And it's writing from prompts, but in a very, very safe atmosphere. And he said, sure. So that was 3 years ago, and I started a group at Willamette, and I started a group at my house, and it's only 8 to 10 people, and it's only each group 2 times a month. And I'm writing with the group. We're all writing together. So a lot of my best ideas come from that writing, and there's something magical about writing in that situation. It's really incredible, the quality of the writing that comes out. It's very exciting. And if you haven't tried it and you want to, the PDX writers in Portland, that's the method they use, and that's how I got started with it. I got to know them. So that's, I write in those groups. And then I'm kind of a scattershot writer. I write in the morning when I'm home in the morning. I write in the afternoon if I'm gone in the morning. I write at night if I'm not home the other parts of the day. Sometimes I write all day on a Saturday. Sometimes a day will go by and I don't write, but usually I'm reading something related to the writing. Now I'm reading a lot of history of Italy and also novel writing how-to stuff because I'm working on novels mostly. So it's all kind of writing related usually.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
If you could, with your ESL work, any ways that you've used poetry in the classroom specifically, either writing or reading, and how that's worked out?
Really, really, really well. Yeah. It's nice because poems are shorter. And then, and there's a lot of poems that the students could respond to. My favorite thing when I was teaching ESL was fan letters. Well, a couple of things, but one of them was fan letters. And the students would read each other's work, and then they'd have to write a letter to the other writer explaining what they admired in their work. It was really nice. And then they also put together books of their writing, and another student would write the prologue for one of the other students' books, and talk to the readers about why they should be reading that book, what was so wonderful about it. It was great. And then we had a deal with the library at Chemeketa where the students could put their books in the school library if they wanted to. This is kind of getting off your point. But one of my favorite stories is oftentimes I had students in my class 2 or 3 or 4 quarters or even more because it takes a long time to master a language. And so a new student came in, and a student that had been in the class already was there. And the new student said, "You're Claudia Dominguez? I read your book in the library." I love that story. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yes, Sharon.
Speaking of books, did you bring any to sell tonight?
Well, Sharon, yes, I did. And Sharon was going to be my treasurer, so I wouldn't have to touch the evil money. Thank you, Sharon. This is sweet. No, pigeons flew the coop. Pigeons had 2 printings. But you know what? If you Google it, you can find used copies. And every time I find one now, and I look for them, and then I buy another one, because otherwise they're not in stores anymore. I bought, if there's one on the shelf in Salem or any other bookstore, I bought them, because those are the only ones I have now. Yes.
How long does it take you to write a poem? I know that's open-ended, some might come in one sitting, some might...
If it comes in one sitting, it's a miracle. I think I've maybe had 2 of those in my lifetime. And mostly I revise and revise and revise ad infinitum. And sometimes it seems like I haven't lived through whatever it is I have to live through to be able to finish that poem. And some poems I go back to after, I don't know, months or even a year or 2, and it's like, oh, then I can finish it. I can see it in a way I couldn't see it. And then when I submit, also, I look at it again. I almost always change something. Yeah. Yes?
What brought you from Yonkers to Oregon?
Well, I wasn't getting along very well with my mother. That's one thing. Yeah. My father died and left me some money. My first husband and I quit our nice, secure New York City teaching jobs. Our parents were beside themselves. But we were like young and, we can just go anywhere, we'll get a job. And we got in the car and we drove cross country. And I don't know how we knew, but we knew about the bottle bill that Oregon had, where it was, I think Oregon and Vermont were the only 2 states that had it then, and the beaches bill also. So we wanted to see Oregon, and then there was an aunt in California we were going to go. But it got to be like August, and we needed jobs, really. So we looked at the Portland State Job Board, and we both got teaching jobs in Woodburn. I didn't stay very long, but my former husband stayed there a long time. But we were just like young and, yeah. And
what makes for quality writing? You said quality writing. Is there a standard? Is it the grammar? Is it the simile, metaphor? What makes for, how do we know if it's quality writing?
ooh, I don't feel like I know either. For me, it's somehow there's music, and for me, a lot of things, my teaching, my writing, it sort of feels right to me. It grabs me. Grammar is nice, but it's not nearly as important as the words and the connection with the reader, I think. I don't know. If I said quality writing. Oh, you are. Thank you for being such a good listener, careful listener. Yeah, no, truly. But boy, I see a lot of really high quality writing. Beautiful, beautiful writing, amazing writing.
Well, Lois is going to be here for a while, and there are some books for sale back here. And please help yourself to refreshments. If you'd like to take some with you, please do that. That's what they're for. Let's give
Thank
Lois a hand.
you.